The Dallas Cowboys are heading into one of the most important off-seasons in recent memory, and everything feels connected. Roster decisions, cap management, coaching changes, and long-term identity are all colliding at once. And that's why the conversation around George Pickens has become so fascinating. This isn't just about a wide receiver contract. It's about how Dallas wants to build, how patient they're willing to be, and whether they're ready to think creatively instead of emotionally. George Pickens is the biggest name the Cowboys have entering free agency, and that alone creates pressure. Elite receivers don't come cheap anymore, and Pickens is going to command a significant cap hit if Dallas lets this play out traditionally. The franchise tag is an obvious option, but tagging a receiver is no longer a neutral move. It locks up cap space, delays clarity, and sometimes creates tension with the player. That's why the idea of sign and trade has real merit here. It allows Dallas to control the asset while avoiding a long-term financial commitment they may not be fully comfortable with. If you step back and look at the league, there are several teams that believe they're one elite receiver away from legitimate Super Bowl contention. Those teams are usually aggressive, cap-flexible, and willing to part with premium draft capital. Dallas Cowboys Wire floated the idea that Pickens' value could be roughly equivalent to a pick in the low 20s, and when you look at the market, that actually feels realistic. Receivers of his caliber rarely become available in their prime, especially without injury concerns. Buffalo stands out immediately. The Bills are in win-now mode, and Josh Allen has been carrying an offense that lacks consistent explosiveness outside of its core weapons. A receiver like Pickens could stretch the field, win one-on-one matchups, and take pressure off Allen in critical moments. Buffalo also has the draft capital to make it work without crippling their future, which is exactly the kind of trade Dallas should be looking for. San Francisco is another intriguing possibility. The 49ers have been creative with their cap, aggressive with their roster, and unafraid to make bold moves. Adding Pickens to an already dangerous offense could push them over the top. And while they don't draft high, their ability to maximize late picks makes a trade more palatable. From Dallas' perspective, getting multiple picks while avoiding a massive extension is a smart long-term play. The Chargers make sense for similar reasons. They have a quarterback who needs more reliable weapons, a front office that understands urgency, and enough flexibility to absorb a receiver contract. New England is a different case entirely, but equally interesting. They're rebuilding, they have cap space, and they need a true offensive centerpiece. A deal involving Pickens could accelerate their timeline, especially if they believe they've solved their quarterback situation. Indianapolis and Carolina are more speculative, but not impossible. Both teams need offensive identity, and sometimes that starts with a player who forces defenses to change how they line up. The wild card, of course, is Pittsburgh. The irony of Pickens potentially returning to the team that moved on from him isn't lost on anyone. But circumstances change. Coaches change. Philosophies change. And if Pittsburgh believes Pickens has matured, or that their new leadership can manage him differently, that door isn't completely closed. What makes this decision even more complex is what's happening on the coaching side of the ball, particularly on defense. The Cowboys are actively interviewing defensive coordinator candidates, and that process is unfolding in real time. Christian Parker coming in for an in-person interview is significant. It shows Dallas is serious about continuity and internal development, but also aware of the competition. The fact that Parker is scheduled to fly to Green Bay immediately after should raise alarms. If Dallas truly believes he's the right guy, they may need to act fast. Green Bay losing Jeff Hafley to Miami created a vacuum, and Parker is familiar with that organization. If the Cowboys hesitate, they could lose a candidate they clearly value. This is one of those moments where decisiveness matters. Waiting too long can cost you more than just a coach. It can cost you momentum. Meanwhile, other options are disappearing. Jeff Ulbrich is off the board, retained by Atlanta, and that tells you something important. Teams are prioritizing stability on defense, and quality coordinators aren't going to sit around waiting. That's why the name Sean McDermott deserves serious discussion. He may be known as a head coach, but at his core, he's a defensive architect. His track record speaks for itself. turnovers, discipline, consistency. Those are hallmarks of his defenses. If McDermott doesn't land another head coaching job, Dallas should absolutely explore the possibility. Pairing a ball-hawking defensive philosophy with elite talent like Micah Parsons could elevate this unit to another level. And speaking of Parsons, the fact that Green Bay is interviewing candidates who could potentially coach him only underscores how valuable defensive leadership is right now. All of this ties back to the original question: what kind of team do the Cowboys want to be? Do they want to lock themselves into another massive receiver contract and hope everything else falls into place? Or do they want flexibility, draft capital, and the ability to build a deeper, more balanced roster? A sign-and trade for George Pickens wouldn't mean giving up on talent. It would mean maximizing value. It would mean trusting your scouting department, trusting your coaching staff, and trusting a long-term vision rather than chasing short-term comfort. The Cowboys have an opportunity to be proactive instead of reactive, strategic instead of sentimental. This offseason is about choices. Every move sends a message. What Dallas does with George Pickens, who they hire on defense, and how quickly they act will tell us exactly where this franchise believes it's headed. And for the first time in a while, it feels like the Cowboys are standing at a crossroads where creativity, patience, and courage could finally change the narrative. Welcome in, Cowboys Nation. Appreciate everyone tuning in today. We've got a packed episode, and I mean packed because Dallas Cowboys news and rumors continue to swirl around one very specific topic: the defensive coordinator search. And I know a lot of you are anxious. I know some of you are frustrated. I know some of you are already convinced the Cowboys are going to mess this up. But today we're going to slow everything down, add context, add perspective, and really break this thing apart the right way. Because while Cowboys fans are hitting refresh on Twitter, while timelines are screaming, "Why hasn't Jerry hired someone yet?" there's a big disconnect between fan urgency and how real coaching searches actually work in the NFL. And that's the theme of this first segment: patience, whether fans like it or not. Right now, the Cowboys remain firmly in the mix for one of their primary defensive coordinator targets. That hasn't changed. Despite rumors flying all over the place, despite names coming and going, Dallas is still in a strong position. And this idea that the Cowboys are falling behind or missing out simply doesn't line up with how the league itself is operating at this moment. Let's start with the basic facts. As we sit here today, more than 15 NFL teams either need a new defensive coordinator or have undergone major changes on the defensive staff. That is a massive number. And yet, only one team, the Atlanta Falcons, has actually hired a defensive coordinator so far. One. That's it. On top of that, only 5 teams total have even started formal defensive coordinator searches. So if you're sitting there asking, why haven't the Cowboys hired someone yet? The counter question is, why would they rush when almost nobody else has? This isn't Madden. This isn't a free agency auction where whoever clicks first wins. These are human beings with leverage, career goals, families, and multiple interviews happening simultaneously. You can't magically force a defensive coordinator to take your job just because you offer it first. In many cases, offering it too early can actually work against you. And that's where a lot of Cowboys fans lose the plot. Dallas is conducting what you would call a real coaching search. That means in-person interviews. That means internal evaluations. That means patience. And yes, that means waiting while other dominoes across the league fall. Now, let's talk about where the Cowboys actually stand. According to multiple reports and league insiders, the Cowboys have 4 finalists for the defensive coordinator role. Durant Jones, currently the Vikings pass game coordinator. Jonathan Gannon, former Arizona Cardinals head coach. Christian Parker, Eagles pass game coordinator. And Jim Leonard, Broncos pass game coordinator. Those are not random names. That's not scraping the bottom of the barrel. That's a mix of young schematic minds, former head coaching experience, and modern NFL defensive backgrounds. Whether you personally love or hate each name, the reality is this: Dallas is interviewing legitimate candidates. And importantly, they've already conducted in-person interviews with at least 3 of them. That matters. Let's pause right there because in-person interview gets glossed over by fans way too easily. In-person interviews mean real interest. It means time investment. It means the Cowboys aren't just kicking tires. They're evaluating fit, philosophy, leadership style, and alignment with Mike McCarthy and the rest of the staff. This isn't Jerry Jones throwing darts at a board. Now, one name that keeps popping up and then disappearing is Brian Flores. For a while, Flores felt like a potential top option, but the latest Cowboys rumors suggest that he might be off the table at this point. Whether that's mutual interest fading, Flores prioritizing other opportunities, or Dallas simply going in a different direction, we don't know for sure. And here's the key thing. That's okay. Not landing one specific candidate does not mean the Cowboys have failed. Coaching searches are about options, not obsession. If your entire plan collapses because you didn't land one coach, then your plan wasn't very good to begin with. Dallas clearly has a board. They clearly have tiers. And they clearly are comfortable enough with their remaining candidates to continue this process instead of panicking. And that brings us back to the fan anxiety. Cowboys fans have some understandable concern. I want to be clear about that. It's not irrational. This defense has been inconsistent. There are questions about scheme flexibility, red zone performance, and adjustments against elite offenses. Fans want answers. Fans want stability. Fans want improvement now. But urgency does not equal effectiveness. When fans say, we're losing targets to other teams, the reality is almost no one has hired anyone yet. There are bigger dominoes still waiting to fall. Head coaching staffs are still being finalized. Assistants are still under contract. Some coordinators are waiting to see if other opportunities open up. And if you rush now, you risk settling. You risk hiring the wrong fit simply because you wanted to win the news cycle. Dallas doesn't need to win February headlines. Dallas needs to win in January. That's the bigger picture here. The Cowboys are not behind. They are not asleep at the wheel. They are not ignoring the problem. They are simply operating on the same timeline as the rest of the NFL, whether fans like it or not. And as we move deeper into this episode, we're going to break down each finalist individually, explain what they bring to the table, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and why Dallas might lean one way or another. But before we do that, it's important to reset expectations. This hire is not about splash. It's not about name recognition. It's not about Twitter approval. It's about finding a defensive coordinator who can maximize the talent already on this roster, adapt weekly, and complement the offensive philosophy under Mike McCarthy. That's the standard behind suggesting that what the Cowboys were really trying to achieve is only now coming into focus. Away from the microphones and cameras, Jones went even further, floating the idea of busting the budget in pursuit of his long-stated personal goal, becoming the NFL owner with the most Super Bowl championships. He currently sits 3 titles behind New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft, and at this stage of his career, that gap clearly weighs on him. When Jerry Jones talks this way, it forces the league, and especially Cowboys fans, to ask a dangerous but exciting question. Could Dallas actually become aggressive in free agency? Right now, the Cowboys salary cap situation looks less like a clean spreadsheet and more like a Monet painting, slightly blurry and dependent on where you stand. What is clear is that Dallas must clear cap space to comply with the 2026 limit, but the exact number won't be finalized until early March when the league officially sets the cap. As things stand, the Cowboys have roughly $330 million in contracts on the books, while league projections place the cap somewhere between $295 and $305 million. Even under conservative estimates, that means Dallas must find at least $30 million just to get under the cap before making single addition. And that number could grow quickly if the team applies the franchise tag to wide receiver George Pickens, a move that would immediately add close to $28 million to the cap. At first glance, this might sound like a financial nightmare, but the reality is far more manageable because the Cowboys have built their roster with restructures in mind. Dallas can generate upward of $100 million in cap space by restructuring contract for Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Tyler Smith, Osa Odigizwa, Darren Bland, and Jake Ferguson, simply by reducing base salaries to the league minimum and converting the rest into bonuses. However, not every restructure is created equal, and there are legitimate long-term consequences to consider. Fully restructuring Dak Prescott's deal, for example, would push nearly $8 million per year into future cap figures from 2027 through 2031, ballooning his cap hit to over $75 million in 2027 and more than $85 million in 2028. While that move would provide immediate relief, it would also mortgage the future, and the Cowboys must decide whether short-term flexibility is worth long-term strain. A partial restructure may be the wiser path, preserving flexibility without completely overloading future seasons. The situation with Darren Bland is even more delicate. Coming off his second foot surgery in as many years, Bland presents both upside and risk. His fully guaranteed money expires after this season, which gives the Cowboys a relatively clean exit option in 2027 if things go south. Restructuring his deal now would increase future cap commitments at a time when his durability is uncertain. For that reason, the smartest approach may be to keep Bland's contract untouched unless circumstances force the team's hand later in free agency, during the summer, or near the trade deadline. The good news is that other restructures carry far less risk. By reworking the contracts of CeeDee Lamb and Tyler Smith alone, Dallas can free up roughly $36 million in cap space, money that can immediately be put to use. If the Cowboys want to push even further, they can look toward extensions for defensive tackles Quinnen Williams and Kenny Clark, both of whom are under contract through 2027. Clark, in particular, is due an $11 million roster bonus by March 13th, creating urgency that could be leveraged into a cap-friendly extension. These types of moves highlight just how much flexibility the Cowboys actually have if they choose to use it. Among their 15 unrestricted free agents, 3 stand above the rest in importance: George Pickens, running back Javonte Williams, and defensive end Jadeveon Clowney. All 3 have expressed a desire to return, but each represents a very different challenge. Pickens is the most complicated. After arriving via trade from Pittsburgh, he delivered career highs across the board with 93 receptions, 1,412 yards, and 8 touchdowns. He is now positioned to demand top-of-the-market receiver money, potentially exceeding the $34 million per year deal CeeDee Lamb signed 2 years ago. That reality is why many around the league believe Dallas will apply the franchise tag, buying time, but also introducing the possibility of off-season tension. The Cowboys dealt with a training camp hold-in from Micah Parsons last year, and Pickens shares the same agency, athletes first, raising the possibility of a similar standoff. Clowney's market value has also risen. He led the Cowboys with 8.5 sacks and finished the season strong despite entering his 13th NFL year. He has emphasized his desire to participate fully in the off-season program and training camp, something he believes will allow him to be more physically prepared than he was when he joined the team late last season. His on-field production is critical for a pass rush that struggled in 2025, and his off-field leadership has earned praise from head coach Brian Schottenheimer, particularly for his mentorship of younger players like Donovan Ezra. Javonte Williams presents a different kind of dilemma. He rushed for 1,201 yards, the most by a Cowboys running back since Ezekiel Elliott in 2019, but he did so on a $3 million salary. On the open market, that number is likely to double on a multi-year deal. Dallas can argue that production at running back can be found anywhere, pointing to Williams himself and